Welcome to another episode of Breaking the Glass Ceiling. This is your host, Kofi Thompson here, and I'm super excited for our guest today, Andrew Dewar. So if you guys do not know Andrew, he's a co-founder of 5-Year You and also a serial entrepreneur and a certified public accountant. His dedication to financial freedom led to the national recognition when he achieved the remarkable feat of paying off his mortgage in just 6 years. He's also a personal development enthusiast and a resilient soul who has triumphed over numerous obstacles, which led him to advocate for the power of self-improvement. And Andrew's journey drove him to explore various therapeutic approaches and amass a treasure of insights to help others conquer personal traumas. And he deeply believes in the transformative power of self-discovery and teaches people what it truly means to choose happiness. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Thank you so much for having me on, Kofi. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man,
I'm really
absolutely. I'm pretty excited to dive into this today because especially the world we live in today, self-discovery, I feel is just something that we are not talking nearly as much about. So many people are just so caught up in the trends, caught up on what the next influencer is saying. And I feel there's oftentimes we skip over this part of actually understanding, who the individual is and how you can bring out your personal talents and discover your strengths so that you can show up in the world, with your light as bright as it can be.
Yeah, exactly. It's something that we're not, I don't know if they're teaching it in school now, but it definitely wasn't taught in school back when I was there. I find that we all have innate gifts, innate skills inside of us, and our job as humans is to kind of grow into those things, to just expand, and to, when we kind of come from our truth, we honor our truth and we grow, we serve the world in a way that nobody else can but us, and that helps everyone around us by leading by example.
Mm, man, I love that so much. So let's dive, straight into it. So I'm curious, like for you, like what led you down this, journey initially of just discovering yourself, like going and, learning more about personal growth and development. Was there like an experience that you had in life that flipped the switch for you, or was it your rock bottom, or were you born out of the womb, always just an amazing, aware,
I
person?
would love to say I was born amazing aware, but we're gonna go with number one on that one. So my story is when I was younger and growing up, I was blessed to have an autistic younger sister who
Mm,
I cared for and took care of in the best ways that I could. And around the age of 12, 13, my sister kind of pivoted and she tried to kill me. And that led into abuse for a couple of years. And like a lot of things, um, it was hard.
mm-hmm.
So what happened was my parents had to decide over the course of a couple of years, what do you do? I don't know if you have kids or anything, but it's incredibly hard to try to figure out, what to do in that kind of situation. Um, what happened after that, from that experience was my sister, like she would do something, like for instance, she would walk into a room, grab the first thing she saw and throw it at me without any kind of cue or any kind of indication that that was going to happen. So
Mm-hmm.
I grew up at that point in these formative teen years, not being safe in my own home.
Mm.
Uh, and it went to a point so much where I would be sleeping in the basement and she might wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and she would come in and throw something at me. So I was literally learning to sleep with one eye open.
Wow.
So I then spend the next, well, 20, 30 years trying to make everything around me safe. And my 12-year-old self put this together as if I keep everyone around me happy, then I will be safe and that will make me happy. And I don't
Mhm.
know, you're nodding like, yeah, that sounds familiar to a lot of us, right? So, life goes on. I get married to a wonderful person and have a couple of kids. We build our dream house. I pay it off in 6 years as part of feeling safe, is the reason why I did it, because financially it was probably a terrible decision at the time, but that's just the
Mhm.
way that made sense to me.
Yeah.
And all money decisions are emotional decisions, but we can get into that another time. Uh, and when we're doing this, so COVID happens, and I have been getting sicker and sicker, not from COVID, but my whole life I've had indigestion issues. I've had troubling things, and I've tried everything. Like, I'm going to see an acupuncturist, and basically we got me down to water for my diet, and I still have indigestion, which at that point it shouldn't be. And I'm very much in my accountant mindset. It's all spreadsheets and numbers. And if you can't put it on a spreadsheet, it does not exist to me.
Yeah.
So, so what she says to me in that moment is, maybe there's another reason why you might have indigestion if it's right here. And for you listening, I'm like kind of top of my chest, kind of bottom of my neck here, collarbone area. And if it's that, it could be that your head and your heart are disagreeing.
Mm.
And it's
Mhm.
in that moment that I'm sitting in this room and I just started bawling and accepting that that was kind of the impetus for me to be like, I'd always been into personal growth before that, but that this was like the real meat of it all. Because until then I was kind of just looking at it as like, oh, I want to make more money. I want to be happier. I want outside of me. And I wasn't doing internal work. And
Mm.
so what happened from then, I'll condense it down. I ended up going for EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization R. I can never remember what the R is in this for whatever reason. But as I went through this for the trauma of my childhood, uh, it was amazing. Like, you would go in and you would approach an issue, and what it basically did in your brain is like your eyes would move back and forth. You kind of relive the moment, and then what happened is like it was like pulling the bottom brick out of the Jenga puzzle, and the whole belief system kind of just collapses. And sometimes I would walk out of there going like, man, this is the best day ever. And other times I walked out and I slept in my car for an hour or two because it just completely drained me.
Oh
But what
God.
I saw was that energy, like you could change really, really quickly. And that got me curious about other things. And someone had been recommending that I go to Reiki, and I didn't really know what that was, so I went to it. And in one of I believe it was my first or second session. No, it was my first session. She kind of said, like, I'm working with your chakras. I didn't know what that meant. I knew nothing about this stuff. I'm just like, well, I'll see what happens. And I went in, and she's like, your sacral chakra, which is your second chakra, where your energy is kind of kept, your joie de vivre, so to speak, was in a cage, and we freed it. So you might feel a little different. And so I thought, okay, that's cool. I don't know what this means or anything else. And she's like, just, rest today. I'm like, okay. So this was Saturday at noon, and I went home and I slept until Monday morning. It just completely wiped me out. So that
Yeah.
kind of got me thinking, okay, so there's something with this energy thing. And again, it doesn't fit on a spreadsheet. And my logical brain is really looking at this going, I don't understand what's happening to me because I can't physically see these things. And
Yeah.
I'll be honest, it's driving me crazy. So while I'm working on myself, the next thing that happens is my Reiki's, I can see it's kind of like following the dominoes here. She suggests that I try theta healing. And so I go in, I'm not, again, not knowing anything about it. And she says, well, what do you want to work on? I'm like, well, I'd like to, feel abundant. Like, I've done these money things before, and I've never felt safe with money. And yeah, sure enough, we do muscle testing and whatnot with it, and kind of released a few money blocks. And then, like, within a little bit after that, I won a trip, like a trip to literally anywhere. And I was like, okay, so there's a lot with this stuff that I don't know. And then it's, a few months later, I stumbled onto a theta healing class. It's the last time it was being offered by this person in where I live up in Canada. And I took it and then I've kind of just run with it. So that is my story, which probably isn't answering your question, but that's okay.
No, I
So,
love it. Man, I appreciate you sharing on so many different levels there, Andrew. Like, one, I feel like a lot of people can really relate to not feeling safe in their childhood, and then those experiences and those emotions that we felt because they were so strong, can imprint on us, and then they can carry, later on in life and have a lot of different repercussions. Like I grew up in a household where both my parents had mental illnesses. Like my dad had bipolar, my mom had schizophrenia. So there was never really a feeling of safety growing up. It was always trying to, you're walking on eggshells, like trying to avoid, being hurt and things like that. And I feel naturally like when you grow up in an environment like that, and then you take that on, for me in my late teens and early 20s, I was just, okay, I have to build up all these walls so that I can
mm,
feel safe. But I hadn't realized at that point that I wasn't still in that environment. So I still like I had all the defensive mechanisms from that environment, but I wasn't there anymore. you
yeah,
know?
and likewise. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's amazing how
So
those moments will just trap you.
yeah, and then also the I learned this from my therapist, fawning, right, or like people pleasing. So we can develop these characteristics of like, okay, now I want to keep everyone else happy because I this again will make me feel safe. So even though I want to focus on those 2 points. So when it came to like the people pleasing and fawning, like you know when did you realize that this was not an effective way for you to live, and how did you start to turn that around for people that because I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that still do that people pleasing, still kind of feel they got to satisfy everyone else's needs.
When I first started realizing it was actually my first EMDR session because you do background and whatnot with it. And I acknowledged that I had been trying to make myself safe. And because I was trying to make myself safe, I was not, again, keeping everyone else happy means Andrew's safe. And she pointed out, like, you don't know who you are.
Mm,
And and I was like, yeah, I don't. Like all my preferences I didn't have because I would always default to, well, what do you want to do? And I'm sure it sounds like you probably had similar situations in a
yeah.
similar paths, but different forestry, I guess is the way we can maybe call it. But, um, and when you have that, you're like that's really scary is to go, well, what do I want?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not an easy thing. Um, through going through all this, I recognized that, I was with my ex-wife because of feeling safe, and it wasn't fair to her. It wasn't fair to the kids. It wasn't fair to me as well. And I had to leave that situation. I'm still like 5 minutes from my kids because I love my kids. I was literally father of the year for 15 years while I tried to do all this stuff.
Mm.
And then it's very hard to shift. But I've learned a lot of tools and techniques to help people with that and myself. And when you shift away from that stuff, it gets easier. But I literally moved into my place here and I didn't know what kind of furniture I liked. I didn't know what kind of anything I liked.
Mm.
I've literally
Mm-hmm.
been rediscovering Andy, who got put in, like, I did the same thing with the bricks in the walls. I had a really good fortress, and I am trying to get back to that person, and I still am, but I'd like to hope most of the bricks are down at this point. So,
No, absolutely. Yeah, man. Again, I think that's so relatable. Like, for me, I became a chameleon, and it's wild because I feel like, in my mind, I like kind of saw that as, oh yeah, I can just fit in with anybody. Like I can go with the jocks, I can go with the nerds, I can go with the cool kids, I can, really just fit in with everybody. And to me, it kind of seemed, oh yeah, I'm just very sociable and I'm very relatable. But
yeah.
really deep down, I just didn't really know what was true to me. I didn't really have, early on in life, I didn't really have like an authentic self. I had to
Mm.
develop those things. I just had this huge array of like all these different masks. I was like, I have a mask for every occasion, but you're never going to see my real face. So I think it's, again, like it's so natural for us to kind of, go that route. But what I learned from me, it was, taking the time to spend alone. I think that's where it starts at. It's like, okay, taking the time to spend alone, like really being with yourself, because when you're by yourself, like you're not going to be needing to please, other people. And
Mhm.
when you're by yourself, actually be by yourself, not on social media, not watching a movie, like sit and just, whether it be like reading or just doing something, even just taking a walk, and just think about, like, hey, like, what are the things that you like and don't like? And then one thing that I've really learned that's helped me out is then forming boundaries with people, which I think is one of the hardest things to do as a people pleaser. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
Right? I can see
I'm
like
like
it's like
squirming now. I'm like,
yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. And it's and you can talk. This is so funny because being you're CPA, I'm a financial advisor. We're
okay.
both very logical in the way that we operate. And logically, I used to talk about this with my therapist. I can be like, yeah, I can create this boundary. I can do it. I can do it. All these different things. These are my boundaries. And then once you start interacting with that person, you're well. I mean, I don't really have to say this. I guess they, yeah, well, I'm like, I guess, another time, today's it's raining today, so maybe next week,
Yeah,
like,
I will do that later. The boundary thing will come later is always
oh,
a good one. Yeah, I mean, I've I've found through doing theta healing on myself and my clients is like you when you work on that stuff, you will
mhm,
have you will get challenged. And
mm,
the difference is in life when we're doing the okay, I can do this and versus seeing things as a challenge and things are happening for you, not to you, that kind of becomes a different mindset of being able to look at it and go, okay, I said I was going to set a boundary, and now I have somebody asking me to help them move at 2 a.m. I can see this is happening for me to say, how about later? Or how about I sleep at this time? And I'm using a really
mhm.
exaggerated example to kind of prove the point, but you know, when you look at things that they're happening for you so that you can be challenged and they're happening for you, not to you, that way you're able to see things a little differently. But I
Mhm.
totally relate to what you're saying about like, yeah, I can do this. Yeah, I've set a boundary. Yeah, I can do that. That's yeah. And then the first thing you said is like, yeah, I really want you to like me, so I'm gonna go do this right now. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's hard. It's really hard, but it gets easier with practice, like all things.
It definitely does. And last thing I'll say on that too, I think for a lot of times that people again that have that, more people pleasing trait is we fear the biggest thing that we fear is loneliness and like not being liked and not having that approval. And I what I've found is that, like, let's say you're in a relationship currently and you're like, man, this is actually a boundary of mine. The reality is that one, if you don't form that boundary and you don't actually, communicate it and to your, whoever you're in a relationship with, you're only gonna grow to resent that person because they keep crossing that boundary. And that's the reality. I've like it just becomes this thing where it's just like, man, like this person keeps doing this thing and you're just going to continue to grow in your resentment for that person, but it's really because you haven't communicated it. But when you do communicate it, the reality is that, like, if that person truly cares about you, you're not going to lose that relationship. Like that
Right.
person will, wow, like I understand, or like I didn't realize I was doing this, and they will shift their behavior because they still want to be in a relationship with you. And if they don't
Yes.
shift their behavior, you should really consider whether or not that's someone that you want to continue to have a relationship with.
That's just it. I think part of the challenge of growth is knowing that you may outgrow the people around you.
Mm,
And that's the part that we fear. What we don't tell ourselves is think of all the people that are waiting to come meet this newer version of you that want to be with you. I could have um at the beginning of this, I could have not chose to grow. I could have stayed put or I could have just done whatever. But a lot changes when you decide to grow. It's almost like you're in your protective bubble, right? Like you have your circle of influence and you have all your people in it, and you know that you want to grow and go out of this bubble, and getting out is really, really hard. But once you get outside of it, things get a lot better. And that's when you get to live kind of that 1% life. And I'm not talking about finances, though that can happen. I'm talking about like that 1% happiness where you are no longer held to the beliefs and social paradigms that everybody else around you has. When I talked about paying off my mortgage, every person looked at me like I was crazy. Nobody understood it. And I still went and did it. And I was really happy for that for a bunch of reasons. But if I had looked to stay in that circle of people that didn't understand that, I never would have done it. I just would have done other
Yeah.
things with that money. And when you are growing, the natural inclination for us is to think about what we're going to lose when really it's kind of like clearing space so that you can make room for the ones that want to be with you and want to encourage your growth. And that's a bit of a challenge, but that's what happens when you want to exceed what you're doing currently. When you want to excel, you have to let go of some anchors. And those people, they don't want you to change because they like how things are. They like how things are staying the same, but also they may be scared of changing themselves. And sometimes you just have to be that example. I mean, and other times you know, you grow, and if they're not willing to follow you around, like follow you in that growth, it's just not their path. You have to walk your path, which is really hard for both of us at times by the sounds of it. So, but that's how you grow is, you get out there, you meet people, you do what it matters to you. Most of
Yeah.
the stuff you told me 2 years ago I'd be doing, I'd just laugh in my face. Like I would just
Mhm.
not a chance. And here I am doing these things, and it's not like there's this grandiose plan. It's just literally, oh, this is something that interests me. This is what I'm going to pursue. Part of it is just giving yourself permission to lean into it, even just a little bit, so you know what it feels like.
No, I absolutely agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. So, man, I want to go into happiness, but before we get there, so I'm curious, when it comes to people living in their lives, like how can someone tell if they may have had traumatic experiences from their childhood that's now impacting their lives? Like, how can they become more aware of that? And then, my follow-up question is kind of going to be, how can they work on healing that? But I guess how can they first start becoming more aware if they have traumatic experiences that are impacting their life presently?
So emotion is energy in motion. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times, uh, when we are feeling past trauma, we'll have like a recurring pain somewhere. Like for me, things would be going good, and then suddenly I would get like this pain in my neck or kind of shoulder here, and it would come on at different times, and then I started to notice it was related to certain people.
Mm.
So that's the leaf on the tree, right? If you're talking with your buddy, and your buddy brings up something in your life or like from your past, and you're like, "Ah, I don't, you kind of wiggle a little bit on it, or you just don't have like there's some sort of discomfort. That's the leaf. Now we need to follow that leaf all the way down to the branch, to the trunk, to the roots of it. And we do that with theta healing. A lot of therapies do it. I'm a believer, and I wasn't before, but I'm a believer that change can happen really fast when that person's ready. So if you have something in you that's going, like I always have this indigestion whenever I see this person, or whenever I go by this place, or I have this thought, yeah, then we start kind of digging for the belief, the root thought, the root cause of that. And it might be like in my case, it was like, okay, well, I was walking around with fists all the time everywhere. Not like ready to fight, but like just kind of down. And I thought it was normal. And I did this for so long that I didn't even realize it. And then
Mm.
suddenly I'm like, why do I have fists every time I go out. Well, every time I go out, I'm looking for a threat. It's a terrible way to live. And so I'm like, well, why am I doing that? Well, maybe it's because I played sports and people would hit me. It's like, okay, but I don't feel like that when I'm playing the sport. So it's probably not that. And you start kind of peeling it back. And then eventually it's like, for some reason, I can't look at pictures of myself in my childhood.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And then you start going like I knew I hadn't forgotten what happened to me. A lot of people do. We repress it, and there are safe ways to approach that. Um, but sometimes we just need to scrape the layers one at a time before we get down to the deeper root. Everybody's different with that. So when it comes to trauma, just kind of pay attention to your body. Your body knows long before your head does. In fact, your head is likely taking you out of the game more than anything else. It's probably going, it's fine. I have indigestion. I will have an antacid. I have a headache. Oh, well, what's a headache? A headache is tension somewhere. You
Mm.
know, I one of my things that happened because uh life has a fun way of doing things to you to bring things out. And
Yeah.
mine was a concussion playing hockey where I couldn't look at a screen for 6 weeks over Christmas break. And the result of that was like just tension in my jaw of trying to control everything. So your body knows there's a lot of cues that like tension in your jaw is often like a sense of like trying to control things. Pain in your shoulders is feeling like you should be doing things. I use air quotes for that. So you just kind of know my body is sending me messages. It's just whether you want to hear them. But that's kind of like the first tell of trauma to me is like, oh, I've got this
Mm.
sensation, this pain here. Okay. So let me lean into that a little bit and we go from there.
Mm. Okay. So now then, like in recognizing that, discomfort, that pain, what are, a few steps that you would take to then start healing from that pain?
Well, name it to tame it is a good one where you kind of go like, okay, when I've got a shoulder pain. Okay, why do I have a shoulder pain? Well, every time I feel like I should be doing stuff that I'm not doing, I just feel like this weight on my shoulders. Okay.
Okay.
So what are the thoughts and emotions behind that? It's like that there's a pressure. Okay, what are you telling yourself? And you can do this if you're willing to look at it. And then you kind of can go, okay, I am telling myself you're nothing unless you're accomplishing stuff all the time. Okay,
Mm.
that's gonna give you some stress. You're
Yeah.
like you are never gonna relax. And I just think I just did a little mini session on myself just there. But yeah, like so you go, okay, I've got this feeling that I need to be doing something all the time. Okay, well, where does that come from? Like, did it come from school? No, not really from school. I couldn't have cared less if I had straight A's or straight B's as long as I passed and got through it. Okay, so then what is it? Well, I feel like I need to be doing these things. Why? Why do you feel that? And sometimes we don't know. And that is okay. And that's where you go find therapist, energy healer, whatever you feel kind of called to do. It's going to be different for everyone. If
Yeah.
somebody comes to me, we try to find the root cause and then we work on it. And yeah, we remove and replace it and we do muscle testing to try to find the source of it because once you figure it out, then you can move forward.
Yeah. No, I like that so much. And, as you said, like, there people have very different ways. Like there's many different ways to skin a cat. So,
Yes.
finding out, what works for you, whether it be, going to different, professionals, finding different modalities. But, I think the key here thing is like, this stuff is so like important. Just, hearing what you share, there's it's weird because different people I feel like have different reactions to it. So for you, it sounds some of the things manifested, physically. And for me, I found that like a lot of things would, more so manifest as, various emotions or ways that I would express myself. But I think that I also developed unhealthy ways of dealing with it, coping mechanisms, whether that be,
Right.
sex, drugs, and alcohol, or all the,
Yeah.
short-term hedonistic things that people do to distract themselves. And it's wild because like for example, I realized that growing up, I didn't have this sense of feeling loved, for example, like in relationships. That was something where like it just because there wasn't a lot of communication, closeness, didn't really get that growing up. So that had a huge impact on me as I continue to move into my adult life. And so, in seeking like intimate relationships, for me, I had to feel loved very quickly. So, that usually meant, hey, like, we're getting intimate very fast in the relationship. And really have to know this level. Like I have to have like some certainty that this person likes me or whatever it is. And I didn't kind of just when I was younger let things kind of just naturally progress. So either it's there or it's not there. But then I
Right.
realized that like, why do I have this idea that like if we're not intimate in the first couple of dates, then this person's not for me? Where did this come from? And so understanding where some of the beliefs that we have actually stem from
Right.
is so valuable because then we can say, hey, okay, why do I believe this? This is why I believe this. Okay, that makes sense. But is this true now? Does this have to be a fact now, even though things are differently? And then when I gained that awareness, I was able to make a choice and be like, okay, that is important to me. I can wait, till the fourth, fifth day. I can wait a month or two, and I can let the relationship develop naturally and now make a different choice. But I feel for so many people, the reason why I'm so passionate about this is because I feel like so many people are living Groundhog Day. They like are just living the same experience
Yeah.
every single day because they don't realize that they're not living life consciously. It's almost they're letting their subconscious and their, unconscious parts of their being
Right.
dictate life.
So if you're not living on purpose, you're living by accident. So,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
and what happens to most of us is our brains are really, really lazy. Our brain's favorite thing to do is to save energy. So the
Yeah.
second you recognize, gee, if we don't get intimate by the third date, that means this. So I need to do all the things to do that. So then I can that pathway can be made, and then it gets made again and again and again and again. And when you're doing that, there is nothing inherently wrong with any of this stuff, except if you're looking at it and going, there is an underlying reason for this, and I need to address that. So,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and one of the things I think a lot of us, well, let me just say this. With the people I work with, the first few sessions are usually the same. They're always different, but people come in for lack of self-love, lack
Mm.
of worthiness, lack of kindness to self, which kind of falls into self-love, but there's a slight difference. And the thing we've found out over the years and what I keep seeing is that most of us don't know love or self-love, worthiness is because we were never taught it.
Mm.
So um, now, if I tell you right now, I could do muscle testing with you right now, but I won't put you on the spot.
I would love
Um,
to, actually.
okay. um, So careful what you wish for. But so what we usually test for in the beginning is like we do baseline testing, and then I like to make sure that there's these core things that we know how to feel, not from our conscious mind, but from our heart and our soul. So one thing that most of us don't know is how to love. We've grew up without feeling love, or we did and we just couldn't feel it because stuff happened.
Mm.
And then that worthiness thing, it's like it all hinges on these like pillars that we think we do because our conscious mind goes like, well, do you love me? Yeah, I love you. Well, what does that actually mean? How do you know love is love? Maybe
Yeah.
your love isn't actually love. Maybe your love is conditional love, not all-encompassing love, because you don't know how
Mm-hmm.
to love yourself. So you're going outside of you to try to bring that love in.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want a muscle test, we can do that. I mean, it's totally up to you. We're going on the fly here, but I'm always game. I figure the more people know things, the better it is for all of us. So
Yeah.
I just want everybody to heal. So I would need you to stand up and kind of turn to the side. All right. Okay. So you're gonna close your eyes. I got a test to make sure you can be tested. So you need to be properly hydrated. So you've been drinking stuff. So you're going to lean forward or backwards depending on the answer. Don't let anything happen. So I'm going to ask you a couple of baseline questions here. My name is Kofi. I want you to say it out loud. Just repeat after me everything and just see where you move.
Okay. My name is Kofi.
Okay, so you're moving forward just a little bit. So that kind of pull you have forward, just go with it. It's not going to throw you over or anything like that. Um, no, just say
No,
no. Okay, you can see that it's pulling you backwards, and that's usually what happens. When you muscle test positive, true statements will move you forward, negative statements will move you backwards. Let's try yes.
yes.
My name is, there you go. Okay, so you're moving forward. That's good. And we'll try one more. My name is Andrew.
My name is Andrew.
All right, you're moving backwards. Okay, so let me try something else here. I know what worthy feels like.
I know what worthy feels like.
There you go. You're moving forward. That's awesome. All right, good job. I know what self-love feels like.
I know what self-love feels like.
Awesome. You're moving forward on that one too. You have done the work, my friend. I love this. I know how to love somebody.
I know how to love somebody.
Okay. I know what love feels like.
I know what love feels like.
So I'll get you to stop because we can go into a whole session on this
Yeah, yeah,
if you want. So what I saw real quick is A, you do know what it feels like to be worthy. We didn't test if you actually are worthy, like, knowing the feeling, like you have the feeling, you have the belief, and then you have like kind of the thoughts around it, which we
yeah.
do test for. So the loving part is, you tested negative on, what was it? You know how to love somebody,
Yeah.
right?
See that's interesting because for me, I feel like I'm trying to figure out that because like I just learned how to love myself recently in the last couple of years.
Good for
So
you.
now I'm in this place where I'm okay, loving somebody is different than loving myself, right? I have to like understand who they are, be understanding and, give them space and things like that. I don't know if that could be, some of the reasons, but
It might be, yeah, absolutely. What can also be is you might not know how to love somebody. And again, we've just met today. So, but you might not know how to love somebody because you might be afraid of certain things. You might be, like you can have a dual belief. You can have loving somebody equals pain because you've been hurt in the past in relationships. And when you have you have those two beliefs, yeah, your lips pretty good there, friend.
yeah.
But so think about this. Part of you is wanting to go this way. It's wanting to go, I want to love somebody. And the other part of you is going, if I love somebody, I get hurt. You have a tug of war going on within you.
Wow.
So what happens? You don't do anything, or you get in a relationship and you repeat the same thing that you've repeated in the last 10 relationships until you learn the lesson, whatever that is. I had a friend who
Mm,
well, I had a friend and myself, like earlier on in relationships, like they just cheated on me every time. And I
yeah.
couldn't figure it out. And I'm like, why is everybody like this? But it's like you have to learn, like life is throwing you a lesson. And if you don't learn that lesson, you're not going to move on. If you look at life like a video game, and this is Super Mario Brothers, you got to get past that first moat so you can
Yeah.
go get the coins and everything at the end.
Wow.
So yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to like put you on the spot, but
No,
like good
I
for
love
you.
it. No,
So
I'm like a
brave to
very, I'm
do
a,
that. I am super impressed. Like, well done. Well done.
ah,
So,
thank
but yeah,
you.
so that's kind of what we start with. And yeah, as you can tell, I'm incapable of small talk. You do not want to sit next to me on a plane unless you want to
Oh,
grow.
no, I would love it. Andrew, I'm telling you, this is the stuff that I truly enjoy. And I'm just a very open person. So that's just me. But no, it's so interesting because, a lot of things you said, I feel aligned with where I am like in this, moment. And, even thinking back to the loving, somebody else part, like, I know that for me in a lot of relationships, like I would almost always find a reason to end the relationship before I got to the point of, truly being deeply, connected to somebody. And it's like, for me, it'd always be like, hey, like I look for flaws a lot and things like that in the relationship or in
Yeah.
that person. And that used to be a reflection of even how I looked at myself. Like I am a very self-critical person. Like I have a lot of high expectations for myself. And, I've grown from beating myself up to more, loving myself and appreciating myself, but also holding those expectations. And now it's okay. doing that for someone else. So, it's just wild because, this exercise really kind of just like spoke to where I feel like I'm in my journey. And now I'm like, oh, let me now learn how to be more accepting and, not be so rigid and picking out flaws in somebody and, things like that. So this is no super interesting. So I wanna,
I was gonna say, as you were saying that, I'm starting to tune my intuition with stuff, and a couple of things kind of came in, but I'll mention to them after the talk, after our show.
yeah.
So
Oh my gosh,
yeah.
no, we should say that now. Put the audience here. But no, so
Um,
we can
yeah,
dive.
I think when I hear that, the thing that kind of came up immediately is you're you're afraid to get connected because you're afraid you're going to get hurt, and if you get hurt, you're afraid that that's going to leave more damage on you because you're seeking to
Hmm,
avoid pain, which is totally okay. That's we are human. This is what we do.
yeah,
But the thing that you're going to have to come to at some point, possibly, and again, I don't know, but the and stuff's just kind of coming through right now. So when you are feeling that, when you're feeling when you're noticing the flaws, you're expecting everything to be perfect. The thing you're forgetting is that we were all born perfect. We're always perfect. The joy is to learn to love someone in spite of those flaws and just to see the perfection that they are, which is they're at their stage. You meet them on their path where they are, not where you want them to be or where you want to be. When you remove your expectations from a person, that is when you can truly experience a next level. It's expectations are a relationship destroyer. Um,
absolutely.
yeah,
I appreciate you saying that because I think that's, I've learned that, having expectations just creates, future disappointment in that regard. And, in that same piece, everyone is going to have their flaws, but it's so valuable to be able to grow with somebody, as well too. And, just kind of going back to this, sorry guys, didn't mean this to be a healing session for me. Hope you guys are getting some value out of this too. But, I also realized that, because I never really expressed my boundaries in relationships in the past before, that also is what led to me to picking out things. And this was all just, I wouldn't communicate it, right? So, let's
right.
say that I go into a relationship and I don't express my boundaries in that relationship, or I go into that relationship picking that person based off a childhood experience that I had, and it may be something that I desire, but not something I truly need.
Oh,
Then I
yeah.
moved into the relationship, and then I'm all these different things. I was picking that relationship chemically, not consciously, and then these things start to arise. So now I figure out, oh, this is this, or this thing is that way and all these different things. And then I'm creating this narrative of why this relationship shouldn't work out. But then again, because I'm terrible at communicating my boundaries, I don't even communicate to that person to give them an opportunity to then change. Yeah, it's just this repeated thing. So long story short, what I've found is that, this as I've grown in relationships, consciously picking someone instead of chemically picking them. Find out, like for me, it was like doing the work to understand what are my needs and what are the things that I truly want and what will
Mm.
actually be necessary to build and cultivate a healthy relationship in the future. Like what are the things that I need to be doing? What, qualities should that person have as well too? And then as you continue to grow, understanding that fairy tales are fake and no relationship is just going to flow perfectly with no conflict, but that conflict is there because it creates understanding and more connection.
Right. I agree with you wholeheartedly with that. I believe that communication is the harder part of a relationship, and you need to have it if you want to grow. And it's the more you can communicate openly. Like you've seen how we are. I'm a terrible first date, as you can tell. I'm like, okay, let's just like get it all out, and we'll see if we like each other at the end of this hour.
Yeah.
And if you do, great, and if you don't, great too. We've saved each other, a 6 months worth of like skirting around issues. So I think that, as far as relationships go, expectations and all of that stuff, when we look at it, what we want to see is the best for both people. And I think that's kind of what true love is. And that comes from a point of accepting that that might not be you in that moment, or
Mhm.
it might not be them. I always, the thing that came to mind is like it's funny when we find partners and we're like, oh, you're really good at like you're really good at Italian cooking. I need you to learn how to cook Chinese, right? You would never
Yeah.
go get a cat and then ask it to bark like a dog. You just wouldn't. But we do that with people, and it doesn't make a lot of sense when you look at that.
Hmm.
But when you can love a person for who they are and how they are, including their flaws, including their shortcomings and all the things, and just know that that's who they are, that is a much better place to be at. But it takes time. And part of that gets easier when you accept yourself for your flaws. That is a bigger challenge for sure.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you going through that, Andrew. And one thing that I'll add on there too, is, love somebody for their flaws and who they are, but also make sure that you understand like what your needs are in a relationship
Mm,
and ensure that those needs can also be met. Because I think that it's, absolutely, say for example, you're in a relationship and for you, you need to communicate with that person at least 3 times a week just to, you know,
yeah.
just to feel safe, and secure. And that person's not really the best at communicating.
Yeah.
Um, Absolutely, understand, appreciate, who they are, but also make sure that you communicate, and in the best way that you can, in a way that's being empathetic towards, who they are, but saying, hey, I really enjoy building this relationship with you. And for me, it helps to feel, secure as we continue to grow. If even if we just touch base, a couple times a week, doesn't have to be a long conversation, but just hey, good morning. And
Yeah.
because I think that's oftentimes, why people will go into relationships and they have all this dissatisfaction is because they're not getting their needs met. Oftentimes, just a really important piece.
I agree with you. I think everybody's communication style and everything is a very important thing. I know there's different attachment styles. Like there's anxious attachment and kind of like avoidant attachment, and then I don't know, perfect.
Secure,
I really know what the other one
secure
is.
attention. Yeah.
Security, there you go. Um, and I think the more you can know about these things, not for the sake of being in a relationship in that moment, but for just knowing who you are and how you are. Like another one is love languages. Like if you know that the person you're with is quality time and yours is words of affirmation, that's okay. And you just need to know that so that you can be better for that yourself and that person, right? Like it's I mean, we're saying all this stuff about relationships, but relationships do require, some give and take because it's not about changing the person. It's just kind of going, okay, like even for friendships, if you and I are going to be friends and I'm like, okay, dude, I need to be texted at least like once a month for it to feel like a friendship, not reaching out once a year to say, hey, can I borrow $20? Like that's not going to work for me. And
Yeah.
and if you're like, okay, well, I'm the kind of person that like, I only want to see people when they're in town. So, when you get to town, hit me up and we'll hang out. And otherwise, like we're good. I don't need that continuous reinforcement. Everybody's different. So, but the
Yeah.
more open you communicate that to somebody on any kind of relationship, and I get for guys, sometimes it's a little hard to do that. And with coworkers and all this stuff, it can be like that, especially family. But it's important that they know where you're coming from and what's valued to you. Because if you're not communicating that, they're not going to know. They're not mind readers. I guarantee you, nobody reads minds like that. So
Mhm.
I can barely,
Yeah.
I can barely read my own mind, let alone trying to read somebody else's. So
Oh my gosh. No, it's so true. So I want to switch gears here for a second because this is a point that I really want to make sure that we covered. But what does it look like to choose happiness in life? Because I just love, just the thought of that because I think it's so empowering to be able to, make the conscious choice of being happy. And um, I don't know the statistics around it. I may be a little biased, but I feel the majority of people are not choosing
yeah,
happiness. I'd love for you to
that's pretty
elaborate.
good.
Yeah.
Well, I think happiness is an inside job, and choosing happiness is something that happens from moment to moment. Now, I can say that it is not the easiest thing to do, but it gets easier with practice. So
Mhm.
we were talking before about like the pathways in our brain and stuff like that. So if you think you're driving a car and you drive down the same road every day, that road
Mhm.
is going to be very, very well worn. That path is there. You're going to be used
Mhm.
to going down that path. So if somebody cuts you off, and your first intention is, oh, they're doing that against me. This person who doesn't know me cut me off. And they hate me and I hate them and blah, blah, blah. Now, you're defaulting to anger, you're defaulting to like personal stuff. You can choose differently. And choosing happiness is that. It's when somebody cuts you off and you say, oh, this isn't about me. I hope that they're okay. I, bless them for
Mm,
thinking that getting in front of me is going to get them through that red light. I'm going to meet up with them at the red light and I'm going to choose differently than choosing anger. And when you do that, you start moving the dial in a different direction. So you can kind of go, okay, I'm going in a new path.
mhm.
And I've been doing this for years, and I still have moments like usually when I'm not at my best, when I'm low on sleep or I'm hungry or just, I've let one thing kind of in that day that I shouldn't have let in, and then suddenly like the dominoes start to fall in the wrong direction.
Absolutely,
And
yeah.
when that happens, it only takes a minute. You just got to kind of get out of your own painting and look and go, oh, look, Andrew's going down this pathway of getting angry. We should probably do something about that. We should probably try to choose differently, whether that's giving Andrew a coffee or a chocolate bar or whatever it is for you. I'm 48 hours into a fast as of this moment, so I'm a little food focused. I'm not gonna lie. Uh, but but you have these things, and it's good to challenge yourself to be like, is this really serving me? Am I really going to be thinking about the guy that cut me off 3 months from now? No. So why am I thinking about it 5 minutes from now? You have a period of venting, getting it out, and then let it go. Happiness is a moment by moment choice. And I think a lot of us forget that. So I know I do from time to time.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love it. I think those are really good philosophies and things you can kind of take away to allow you to choose happiness more. As you said, like not taking things personal. I believe that so many things happen in life that is not a personal, attack on us. But we walk through the world with our ego, right? And our ego tells us that every single thing is, based
Yes.
off, us at the end of the day. So, man, I agree on that in so many levels. If you can really walk and detach yourself a little bit from the fact that, hey, things do just happen. That person could be speeding because they're late for a job. They could have their, wife who's giving birth in the back seat, or,
Exactly.
or that person that was, had a bad attitude with you at the restaurant. They could have, I don't know, been evicted from their apartment. Like there's all these different things that, of course happen, but we tend to personalize it. And I think that only causes just more pain for us. And then I think that other point you made is a really awesome point. I learned this in the beginning when I, started my financial advising career and started my own practice. I remember when this who I, learned from as an advisor early on, he told me, if it's not going to matter in 5 years, don't spend more than 5 minutes, worrying about it.
And there's definitely something I believe that too. It's a good thing to remember, but you got to let that emotion out too, because you don't want to lock it in. You don't want to be angry and lock it in. You just want to be kind of let it go.
Mhm.
When you have that, when you get angry, when all these things happen to you, I'll challenge you to start thinking differently on it. And the question to ask yourself is, why is this happening for me?
Mm.
And
Mhm.
when you can think of that, when you can come back to it and go, okay, you know what? For some reason, people keep cutting me off in traffic and nobody else seems to ever get cut off. And it's like maybe it's happening because I need to learn to let things go. Maybe it's happening because I need to feel my feelings in that moment and then release them and move on. Maybe it's happening so I can love people more. Your journey is yours, and the reasons you come up with are going to be your own. But asking yourself, why is it happening for me? Not why is this happening to me? Takes you out of a victim role and puts you into a hero position. And
Love it.
that is the biggest form of self-love I can think of in this moment is when you start seeing yourself as a hero moving forward through life, growing rather than the victim that's like, oh, everything bad happens to me. Well, guess what? That energy is going to keep coming up over and over again, and everything's going to happen to you until you start deciding what can happen for you.
Yeah. No, absolutely, man. So I know I said the last thing was the last thing, but I have one more thing
Got lots of
before I
time.
dive in and wrap up. So, one thing that I think is I really wanted to talk about is our emotions, and if our emotions that we have and that we feel are, really true, or if they are oftentimes, leading us down the path that we don't want to go. When should we know when to listen to our emotions and when not to? And I'm going to give some context around this as well too.
Sure.
But I remember I was talking with, one of my friends, and she is constantly feeling the same experiences when it comes to relationships. So she, is attracted to like a certain type of person. Usually that person, doesn't really show much attraction for her per se, but that kind of makes her more attracted. And that usually just leads to like, more disappointment down the road. And then, she may go out with another person and there aren't the sparks, there isn't the vibe, the connection immediately. And she's, now this isn't going to work out. And so, a lot of those feelings she has with those emotions, right? Initially,
Yeah.
in those interactions. So, I'm curious for someone like her, should she be continuing to listen to her emotions, or her emotions maybe telling her the wrong story?
I would say if you're repeating the same thing over and over again and you don't like it,
Mm,
uh, that's I think self-awareness has to come into play. So you're seeing this quite evidently, but she might not be. And if
mm,
she's not seeing it, she is not going to change. Now, let's just say she is for the sake of argument. And she's like, you know what? I keep attracting the wrong kind of person and I want this, but whenever I get this, it doesn't do anything for me. It's not, the sparks aren't there. So you would dig a little bit into that and trusting your emotions. I mean, your emotions they're a double-edged sword. They can hurt you and give you lots of pleasure at the same time, you know. Um, but I think a lot of us, when we rely on our emotions without knowing the thoughts behind them and the beliefs behind them, so that's the more important part. So if she's just wanting a bad boy for, I mean, I have no clue who you're talking about. So if she's, drawn to things that she can't have because she feels the need to fix things and to solve things, there's an underlying reason for that that's causing she's having certain thoughts that are leading to certain beliefs and causing her to have these emotions. And we see it all the time with people. I know I've probably gone through that too, like where you kind of want what you can't have, or you think you can fix the world, or you think you're not deserving of something really good, so you go with a thing that doesn't really fit, for lack of a better word. Um, so yeah, trust your emotions when it makes sense, but if you're finding yourself in a loop that doesn't serve you, then you need to question what your beliefs are around that and what your thoughts are. And, it could just be that, again, maybe you need self-love. Maybe you need,
mm.
some inner work needs to happen so that you start attracting the thing that you actually say you keep wanting. Because again, if we have that, the dual belief thing pulling in both ways, your brain's going to keep going to the thing that it always has gone to because that's the easiest.
I think that's so true that, I think it really what it comes down to is if we're consistently having an experience that we don't want to experience, that's when we can then, say, all right, is this emotion that's leading me to make this choice and have this experience? Is this emotion, really, should I keep following this emotion and making this choice based off of it? Or maybe when I have this emotion, maybe I should be considering possibly a different decision that may
Mm,
not seem to align with this emotion, but I can consider a different decision so then I can have a different result at the end of the day. And I think that's
yes.
it's that's how my mind systematically thinks about it, but it
Yep.
makes a lot of sense because yeah, we have a lot of emotions that will kind of align and lead us in a certain direction, but again, our emotions are energy in motion, so that energy could be from the past that again isn't those circumstances that happened in our early childhood or when we were growing up. All these things aren't the same circumstances that we have today, so it makes sense that we shouldn't be making all of our decisions today based off of that environment that we were in the past. Because that
Yeah.
environment changes, it makes sense to, make a new decision. Like if um, let's say I grew up without a lot of, food when I was younger and grew up, more impoverished. For example, I grew up in Section 8 housing. I didn't really have a lot growing up. When I would have food or good food, I would eat as much as I could, right? Because I didn't really have,
Yeah.
I may not have known the next time I was going to get like a good meal. So now though, I don't have that problem. So I shouldn't have the need to stuff my face and eat as much as I can because I know that I'm
The
gonna be
same
able to
way.
eat
Yeah.
this thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, it makes so much sense. Man, this has been, an awesome conversation. We've definitely, dived deep in a lot of different things. So, as we're wrapping up here, Andrew, there's a final question that I always love to ask, my guests. And, you have, a depth of experience through your own life and also healing others as well, too. So I want to give you a scenario. Let's say that you were able to accomplish, all the things that you want in your life. And, we're now at the ends and you're able to leave three pieces of advice to help people, live life more abundantly, be able to live life intentionally and purposefully and heal from their traumas. Like, what three pieces of advice would you give people to help them move more into from survival into thriving, in life?
Love yourself. Your passion is your calling. Find a way to organize your life around that.
Mm-hmm.
That's the things that come to mind right away. I would say that when we love ourselves, we treat ourselves very differently. When we love ourselves, we probably acknowledge the calling that we didn't maybe understand earlier on. And when you pursue your passion, you're never going to work again. So then retirement and all these other things that we save up for and work towards, they don't really matter as much because we're doing what we're on purpose with. And I would way rather live to 100 doing what I love to do than, you know, be waiting out the end of my days because I don't know what to do with my life anymore. So, yeah.
Absolute facts. No, thank you for sharing. And how would you describe someone who is breaking their glass ceiling, Andrew?
I'm gonna say you. Like you literally just did a little mini therapy session in this episode. I put you on the spot. You went with it. You are like walking the walk and talking the talk, and like that is very, very unusual. And I gotta say, I'm really proud of what you just did today because that was really cool. Good for you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate those words immensely. This has been an awesome experience and I love it. I really love, the process of discovery, self-growth. And I believe that when we, step into doing something that may be a little bit uncomfortable, that's
Yeah.
what to grow, the most in life. So
That's the sweet. Yeah. And if anybody listening wants to learn more about me, they can go to 5yearyou.com. There's something on the menu for theta healing too if they want to book a session. Very, very easy. I offer a free 15-minute consult if anybody's kind of wanting to learn a little more about it, if it's for them.
Awesome. That's what I was going to ask. So is that the best way to reach out if people want to connect?
Yeah, 5yearyou.com is the best place. I'm on all the socials. I run that business with my business partner, and I also yeah, that's the easiest one to do to reach me at.
Awesome. I love it. And anything else like big coming up that you'd like to share?
Um,
Projects, events.
I'm getting a book proposal done right now this weekend. So I'm hoping that'll be something. It's going to be about my childhood. It's going to be like a learning memoir where you learn
Hmm.
to overcome your trauma and grow. And I'm really excited about it. I feel that I have gone through these things so that I can share them and help other people kind of come front. And as a male going through what I went through, um, I don't think there's a lot of people talking about sibling abuse. I don't think there's a lot of people talking as a male about that kind of stuff because it is
Hmm.
sort of unique. But the bigger picture of that is owning your truth. And when you can own your truth, you can move forward a lot faster.
Absolutely, man. This has been absolutely awesome, Andrew. Gosh, so many great things that we've dived into in this episode. So I hope you guys were able to gain some more wisdom about how you can be moving with more intention and moving more purposefully. And hopefully my therapy session was also insightful for you guys as well too. But
Love
no,
it.
this has been awesome. Oh my gosh. So we will be seeing you guys soon on Breaking the Glass Ceiling.